It's here. Thank you.
I can do this if it's up there. All right. Good morning and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We're delighted to have you here, whether you are in this space or attending virtually. It's good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Dana Boyle. I use the pronouns she, her, and I'm a member of our board of directors. Every Sunday, our ministers and staff will be running social hour from the social hall. Please join in person or via Zoom beginning at 10:05, or today it would be 12:05, and it's a 20-minute session of sharing in randomized small groups designed to provide a deep and intentional welcome to all. We've heard from many of you how important this time has been to connect and to meet new people. If you prefer an informal time of mingling, feel free to do so in the Emerson alcove. Please be sure to sign up for our weekly e-news if you haven't already. We condense all our weekly news and happenings into one weekly email that goes out on Wednesdays. Service participants today include Reverend Roger, Nico Van Ostrand, and Reverend Jack, with behind-the-scenes support from Aaron Scott and Amy Peterson-Derrick. Music today is from the OK Factor and Virginia Podobinsky. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world.
And welcome everybody, and thank you, Dana, for stepping in at the very last second. I'm thrilled this morning to welcome Reverend Ted Gallardo to our pulpit. Reverend Ted is the executive minister and the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association of the Philippines. I had the great honor of preaching at Ted's ordination in 2013. Ted was the first openly queer person to be ordained in the Philippines UU ministry and perhaps in any ministry in the Philippines. A gifted and courageous leader and a change agent, she has served the only UU church in the Manila area and now president of the UU Church of the Philippines, which is headquartered on Negros Island. And I was privileged also to work with Tet during my time as executive director of the UU Partner Church Council. And Tet was the leader of the pilgrimage that Reverend Jack and Nico Van Ostrand from this church went on in 2019. While Tet's a long ways away, and it's not feasible for her to be actually in this room today, so she will be doing the sermon today by video. And I invite those of you in this space who don't have a great view of the TV screen when the sermon comes and the reading comes to move so you do. We are still awaiting a few pieces of equipment, including a longer cord for this so that it could come a little more into the room.
Why am I part of this congregation, and why do I pledge? More than 40 years ago, I found a place where I could ask big, important religious questions and not be told what the right answers were. A place where my children could grow into their own truth. A place where I am inspired to be the kind of person I want to be. I want this congregation to thrive for us and for others who are seeking an inclusive home base from which to serve the world. I come here because of how we care for each other and for the world. And that's why I pledge. Thanks.
We moved to Minnesota from Ohio, and we had trouble finding people with common beliefs.
That's until we found WBUUC. That was cool.
And it was our son who actually brought us here.
And we found a place for our daughter, too, who was looking for people in the LGBTQ plus community. It's kind of hard to say, yeah.
We missed our family in Ohio, but we actually found a family here.
We're new members, but have never felt so welcome as we feel here.
We love it.
And so our pledge drive is underway. We are off to a great start, having heard from 83 households pledging nearly $350,000. So our thanks to those who have sent in their pledges. 59% of the households who are pledging in the current year have increased their pledge for next year, and we are more than a third of the way to our pledge goal. Great start. So if you haven't done so, we'd invite you to fill out your pledge card. You can do that online or mail in the card, or if you want to make it really simple, in the lobby there's a table with pledge cards in a box, and a representative of our board will be at the table after if you have any questions about the pledge campaign or the budget for next year, plans for next year. And we do indeed welcome you to our church today. Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. And Reverend Jack will lead us in our chalice lighting today.
I don't know when I first noticed it, but at some point I realized that all of us are carrying around a really strange and specific combination of joys and sorrows. The paradox of that relief felt when a loved one who had been suffering passes away and passes out of their pain. The tension of loss and celebration felt when a friend gets married and moves away, or finds a new job in another city, or just moves into a different stage of life where your friendship takes on a new and different shading. I had one of those moments recently while I was thinking about these last 2 years, which have felt simultaneously as long as 2 lifetimes and also as quick as a flash. I remember pre-COVID like it was yesterday. It was actually 2 years ago. We kept hearing about this strange virus, which still felt far away, and it was my friend Laura's birthday party. On the way there to her birthday party, I heard that Tom Hanks, who was down in Australia, had contracted the virus. We were out singing karaoke, but we were scared. We were trying our best to celebrate. The birthday girl sang Bjork. Her husband sang a sentimental country song. And I probably sang a classic 90s hit. But between songs, we were talking about how terrified we were. The NBA had just canceled their season. Our staff here at church was figuring out how to convert our worship into a brand new format. We were scared about what was coming, about what was sure to affect us deeply for at least a month or two, right? And here we are, 2 years later. We have stepped into new possibilities. It could even be argued that we stepped into what felt like an impossibility. Collectively, we have adapted and changed and readapted and readjusted. And here we are, 2 years later. Friday night was Laura's birthday again. So much to celebrate and memorialize. This is that same paradox and tension, joys and sorrows. We celebrated her again, trying our best to close the loop that started 2 years ago. She sang Bjork again, her husband sang country, and I sang 500 Miles by the Proclaimers, because it feels like we've walked 500 miles already and might have 500 more to walk. We light the chalice together this morning in this spirit of remaining open to what is possible and even what seems impossible. Please join me for the opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Just the other week, we heard a unique and stirring rendition of this morning's opening hymn that means so much to many of our UUs around the world. It is the most popular hymn in the Philippines among our UU siblings. And I want to just make a note here that the Spirit moves differently for all of us. So this morning, if the Spirit is moving you to stillness, please honor that stillness. And if the Spirit says sway, then sway. If the Spirit says dance, then dance. If the Spirit says wiggle, then wiggle. And in the spirit of remaining open to the possible, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing together, Spirit of Life, number 123 in the gray hymnal. Let's sing quietly behind our masks here in this room, or sing out nice and loud if you're on Zoom.
As Unitarian Universalists, we wrestle with big questions. Why do bad things happen? Where do we come from? What happens when we die? What is the right thing to do? And while I don't pretend I have answers to those questions, I am grateful for the people and stories we can turn to for guidance as we explore those questions together. This morning's story is The Brothers part of Amazing Grace, and I wonder whether it has any tools to offer for those huge mysteries. Once there was, and twice there wasn't, two old brothers who were inseparable travelers. One was named Life, the other Death. One time, after journeying across a desert, they came to a refreshing green oasis where they were greeted by the spring keeper. "Would you like some cool water to drink?" he asked them. Both the men nodded their assent. Dipping his gourd into the pool, the spring keeper added, "It is the custom to let the elder drink first. Which one of you is the elder?" Life spoke up first. "I am the elder," he said, stepping forward. "No," Death contradicted. "I am the elder." And he stepped forward too, next to his brother. Life smiled, but said, "That is impossible. Things must live before they can die." Death responded, "On the contrary, things begin in death, are born, live for a time, and then return to death." Said Life, "That's not how it works at all. Things come from the Creator, live, and then die. Death began after the first creature lived and died." Said Death, a sparkle in his eyes, "Death is the before and after of all life. Things arise from it and return to it, therefore death is the elder." The two debated like this next to the spring and had yet to drink a drop of water. Finally, they asked the spring keeper to judge truly who the eldest was. "Gentlemen, I cannot say," said the spring keeper. "What you've each told me is true." He looked at the two brothers. "How can one speak of death without life? Death is like a desert until the rain falls. Then all the living things sprout miraculously from the rocks and the sand." He smiled. "And how can one speak of life without death, to which all things are certain to return?" The spring keeper paused. "Neither can exist without the other. The Creator wears both those two masks. Neither of you is elder or younger." He held out a single gourd. "Drink now, together, and go in peace." And the two travelers took the gourd, drank their fill, and headed off in the comfort of each other's company. It is now time for us to sing "Go Lift It Up." This is the hymn we will sing each Sunday at the 11 o'clock service as a blessing for the children and youth who are heading out for their religious education classes. As we all sing right now, I invite the children and youth who are registered for RE to make your way out of the sanctuary. You will look for Amy with the colorful flags, and she will help you find where to go. So please rise in body or spirit here or wherever you are for hymn number 1057 in the teal paperback hymnal.
I invite you now to center yourselves wherever you are, in this sanctuary, in your home, in a car, wherever. Today, our worshiping community stretches from the 55 or so people in this space before the kids just left to 57 households connecting from near and far, perhaps as far away today as the Philippines. Take a moment to take in your surroundings. Then be in touch with your body, your feelings, your thoughts, your spirit. In this moment of meditation each week, we bring together in this community our cares, our joys, our sorrows, as well as the cares and joys and sorrows of people in the world near and far. We are a community of Unitarian Universalists who dance, laugh, cry, and love together. Today we are especially mindful of those among and beyond us who are suffering from grief, anxiety, mental or physical illness, addiction, financial concern, cut off from loved ones, among others. We especially continue to hold in our hearts trans children and the people that love them in places like Texas, Florida, where new measures just add to the oppression. We hold in our hearts the people of Ukraine and all those around the world who are suffering from war and oppression. We also especially hold up today in this place the retired Unity Church Unitarian minister Rob Eller Isaacs, who was recently diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer of the bile duct. We lift up and love Rob and his family and his friends and everyone at nearby Unity Church. We lift up Mickey Madigan, who broke her wrist and is recovering from surgery. And I invite you now to share into the silence the names of those who are on your hearts so that we may hold them together. We hold them all in love. Amen.
Your gifts to this congregation are many and varied, including giving of your time and talents. Today we ask for a gift of your treasure to help sustain the work of this congregation as together we grow our souls and serve the world. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life that we live together.
Thich Nhat Hanh is revered as one of Buddhism's greatest living masters, a poet, a translator, a peace activist, and most importantly to most, a teacher of profound depth and meaning to tens of thousands of followers around the world. It has been about 2 weeks since he died. In his very short commentary on the Heart Sutra, one chapter is called Happy Continuation. Here, Thich Nhat Hanh comments on the line from the Heart Sutra. Here he reflects like this. He says, "One autumn day, I was in a park, absorbed in the contemplation of a very small but beautiful leaf in the shape of a heart. Its color was almost red, and it was barely hanging on the branch, nearly ready to fall down. I spent a long time with it, and I asked the leaf a lot of questions. I asked the leaf whether it was scared because it was autumn and the other leaves were falling. The leaf told me, no, during the whole spring and summer I was very alive. I worked hard and helped nourish the tree, and much of me is in the tree." Suddenly, I saw a kind of wisdom very much like the wisdom contained in the Heart Sutra. You have to see life. You should not say life of the leaf. You should only speak of life in the leaf and life in the tree. My life is just life, and you can see it in me and in the tree. Dear friends, I'm so happy to be in your service today. It is quite daunting to be in the pulpit of a minister I so looked up to in my formative years, Reverend Roger Britzchausen. Roger knows I'm not very effusive with compliments unless I mean them. Roger was at my ordination service in 2013, and I still remember his sermon then because, whoa, he was prophetic. He said ministry is like hiking on a razor's edge, and he wasn't overstating at all. At the time, I was too naive to even consider what would that feel like actually when I begin to deeply care for everyone and not just myself. At the time, I was happy-go-lucky Braveheart. My sister would say my life is sheer serendipity at work. I realize now that I'm a bit grown up that back then I was courageous because I thought I could always just quit and leave. But when you start caring for the people you serve, you just can't quit caring. Thanks, Roger, for giving me that fair warning. You've probably forgotten the sermon you gave, but I didn't, and I'm living it now. You see, friends, the 2.5 years can only be described as the past 2.5 years can only be described as hell. Can we just say that just this once? Oh, we're not supposed to discuss hell in our churches because we're also universalists. But if that wasn't hell, I don't know what to call it. This continuing journey, why this feels so ungrounded most times, what we're going through, is because we are in an age called VUCA or VUCA. Have you heard of this? This is VUCA, and you can Google this. It means volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And this has been the world, the description of the world since 2018. Now put a virus in that mix and then put in some flash floods that follows a drought, a volcanic eruption of what should be a sleeping volcano, some earthquakes, and don't forget the greedy capitalists that are really the real plague. My point here today is that we live in interesting times, or should we just say in times of suffering for many. Let's heave a sigh of relief for being here at this time. And maybe we can be reminded right now at this moment, no one is here to harm you. But oh, the losses we have gone through. My household, the one with my parents, contracted COVID, and most of them survived except for my mother. She died last April. But because my ministry needed me to be 500 miles away from home, to be with other folks who need pastoral care, for families that need intervention, for children that need to understand, I doubt I had fully given myself the extent of my sorrows. I'm afraid one day it might sneak up on me in the middle of a sermon and I just freak out. Every day since, I've given myself time for sorrows. This is contrary to the dominant culture of be happy. If you haven't seen Don't Look Up on Netflix, I recommend you do. There are two scientists who discover that an asteroid is going straight for Earth. And as they go live on TV to announce it, the show hosts keep making light of things and joking around. Then Jennifer Lawrence's character, who discovered the comet, starts to stir things up by asking, what if we are supposed to be sad and afraid? Dear friends, our time is a time for specially sophisticated sorrows. And it needs specially sophisticated tools. And I'm here as your wizard to grant you some of these magical tools. These tools come from different lands and cultures, and they are ancient. They have helped civilizations survive through conquest, pillage, or plunder. They have helped love persist and hope reign in their lands. And you can choose these tools by coming into contact with their owners. And so, having had contact with the owners, I have some of these tools with me. For some cultural tools, those not from my own, I speak of them with reverence because I experienced them within their own cultures. From the lands of the Shoshones and the Paiutes, I bring you public communal grieving. In October 2016, I went to dance with them for 4 days while in ritual chanting. Dancing and chanting for 4 days, breaking only for food and sleep. There, I learned the value of crying in public, gesturing your grief, full body movements and emotions unapologetically, bringing your pain to the community front and center. From the Khasi Hills of India, where many Unitarians live, I bring you nights of prayers with strangers. I was there in 2014 singing for the dead, open to those in community who wish to console the family. From the Nepalis, I bring you paint on your forehead saying you are seen, your sorrows are seen. I was there in 2018 watching the burial rites at Pashupatinath, where the public watched the funeral pyres along the river banks. From the Chileans and the Ilocanos in the Philippines, I give you the dances of death. Members of the community dance to the same music they use for other festivals. Death is a transition like anything else. From my Chinese ancestry, we ring the gongs and chant. We even pay persons to wail loudly for their loved ones during the wake. For many Filipinos, we don't see loss and grief as a private or individual matter. Everyone needs to know what happened. We tell and retell stories because they are not just ours, they belong to the village who is also experiencing the loss with us. We are not alone. This seems more appropriate now that the pandemic is something that affects us all, and we cannot just keep the impact within our homes. I think it's important in our ministry to make these options available to families who are open to communal grieving, not just commiseration, but mourning and crying openly with strangers or anywhere close to our village, our neighborhood, or our families, or anywhere in the spectrum between private and public. Audre Lorde said, "If you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it." We don't just grieve. We enter first into a period of absence before we feel the presence they have left behind. We can grieve both the absence and the presence, and that's okay. We also grieve our former selves, the one that interacted with those we lost, and the former self that this self is no longer. I learned this new word, colacrimate, which means to weep together. There's been a long-winded shift from bigger and interconnected extended families to smaller and detached nuclear families. And then it brought a certain professionalism of emotions, knowing when to laugh, knowing when to cry, and how. Because and they became scheduled and methodical. We have lost the colors of many cultures that give life to our emotional seasons. We are not the people of no color. We are the people of many colors. We, Unitarians, Unitarian Universalists. We don't say, "I see no color." We say, "We see your color." We see the colors, and they are a source of living tradition. And we welcome not just beliefs of different kinds, but also cultures and colors and emotions of every time and place, and even each other's especially sophisticated sorrows. And it's all right.
I know Reverend Tet from the pilgrimage Reverend Jack and I took to the Philippines in 2019. Her ministry with the UU Church of the Philippines showed me what it's like to live Unitarian Universalism out loud through truly radical and often risky work. Reverend Tet was the first Filipino UU minister I got to know, and her example helped open me up to the possibility that I could be a UU minister too, which is a path that I am now committed to. Because that relationship exists, it felt comfortable to ask her permission to deliver a sermon response. Reverend Tet has enthusiastically given her blessing, and it is an honor to be trusted with this response. A couple weeks ago, I went to a play put on by Theater Moo at Mixed Blood Theater in Minneapolis, the first play I've been to in over 2 years. Masks and proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test were required at the door, those new rituals that shape the evening out and are reminders of what we've been through in this pandemic. The play was powerful and heavy, and multiple times old grief rose up in my chest. Multiple times I shoved it back down, tucked it away. And it wasn't until I was back in the privacy of my car that I released those griefs and cried. I know not all of those griefs were in direct response to the play. They were just the top few layers of grief over the losses of the pandemic, the destruction of natural disasters, the violence of humans, just the top few layers of specially sophisticated sorrows. My American cultural upbringing tells me that I have to hold these sorrows by myself. Wait until I'm in the car to show that I'm having an emotional response to the very emotional thing that we all just witnessed or went through together. Individualism lies to me that it is shameful to need help. Don't let anyone else see that there's anything going on. Enter Reverend Tet with the reminder that there are other and often better ways of dealing with sorrow. And how many times have I talked about the importance of things like the feeling check-in we do during religious education classes? I believe in making space for feelings as a central part of being a welcoming community. Yet here I am, sharing about pretending I wasn't feeling sad after watching a sad play in the context of violence and disaster all over the world. Because feelings are hard, and especially the sad ones. Once we acknowledge that they exist, they somehow seem more real. Like when you tell a group, "This sad thing happened this week, but I'm doing okay." And maybe that's true, but as soon as someone responds with sympathy and care, indicating that this is a place where sorrows are welcome because they are part of you and we care about you, suddenly, "I'm doing okay" isn't quite the right description. But usually, this realization that others care about our sorrows is not a bad experience. It can actually be pretty powerful. Imagine what it would be like in a sacred space with other people, whether it's here in the White Bear UU Sanctuary or another space that's filled with beloveds, with everyone crying and sobbing, even wailing openly together. A visceral reminder that while the grief I carry is uniquely mine, it is not all that different from yours, and none of us are alone. This morning, Reverend Jack reminded us that it's okay to move and dance as we sing hymns. Many of us have needed that permission to react outwardly to moving parts of the service, and that's okay. We are out of practice being and feeling together. So I realize the distance between where we are right now and the vulnerability of communal grieving is quite big. This might be one of those lessons that we know we need, but don't really want to pay attention to. But no one really said that the path of transformation from hell, as Reverend Tet named it, towards the heaven on earth / social justice that Universalists dreamed of is easy. It takes a lot to put down those broken tools that are comforting simply because they are familiar. And sometimes the strength of systems makes it impossible to put down a tool we'd rather live without. That path of transformation is not impossible, though. I can begin by occasionally setting down an old broken tool, even if I have to pick it up again later. Perhaps there are a select few people I am comfortable crying in front of if communal grieving is too much right now. Or I can identify ways to use system-enforced tools for good, perhaps offering monetary support to an organization or community I believe in, while also criticizing class inequality and capitalist greed. And I can come into this space and remember that I'm not the only one carrying specially sophisticated sorrows. I am not the only one trying to figure out what to do with the tools I've got or trying to pick up new ones. And whether or not we are ready to sob together, none of us carry our sorrows alone, and it's all right.
We're blessed today to hear both Tet's sermon and Nico's response, and we're going to try out a practice of offering a congregational response. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to type into the Zoom chat box or to speak out loud here in this sanctuary a word or a phrase that summarizes the response of your heart. What are you thinking or feeling after hearing Tet's message and Nico's response? Our regular practice during social hour is to name a sparklet from the service. We're bringing that practice into this moment of the service today. We treat the service itself like a sacred text, and we invite you to name out loud some of the notes you'd be writing in the margins, the sparkles. How do these stories interact with your story? And how can you make meaning of them in your own life? As I hear voices here in this room, and as I see comments in the chat box, I'll be echoing them for us all to hear. So let's take a breath. What is your sparklet? In one word or in one phrase, what is your response? Compassion. Grieving multiple selves. Yeah. Moved. Heavy. Warmth. Community. I see here in the chat box, seeing color. One grief is all grief. Permission. Open to everything. Heart full and open with grief. Hopefulness. Many colors of love. Feelings are hard. Yeah. I'm not alone. One more time. Peace of shared sorrows. Yeah, the peace of shared sorrows. Vulnerability. Yep. Gratitude for common awareness. Cracking open. Share sophisticated sorrows. Not alone. Good to acknowledge importance of grieving. Tears. Grateful and validated. Contemplative. Life lives on in the whole. What else here in this room? One more time? Freeing. Affirming. Connected, support. What else? How to support others. Thank you. It's okay to cry? Yeah. Spirituality. Unconstrained, I see in the chat box too. Heart-centered consciousness. Let's take a moment. Let's take a breath. We breathe together so we can also sing together. Our final hymn this morning is Every Night and Every Morn, number 17 in the gray hymnal. Again, taking the song and the hymn however you need to today in your moment. Please rise and body your spirit, singing quietly behind your masks or nice and loud if you're on Zoom.
Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Joy and woe are woven fine, clothing for the soul divine. Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silk and joy. It is right, it should be so. We were made for joy and woe, and when this we rightly know, safely through the world we go.
By the grace of diversity, may we find ways we can be truer to ourselves. By the grace of diversity, may we find hidden meanings that we can treasure. By the grace of diversity, may we splendidly co create reality to be fulfilling to us all.